The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
For those not watching on YouTube, we should probably explain the Halloween costumes we decided to wear this year, CJ. CJ, what are you wearing?
Well, I'm bringing big time dog ate my homework vibes to this because I was in. So here,
Where have I heard that one before?
So I'm just saying that I was sure that I had some ski goggles. And so I was like, oh, because the challenges of a podcast costume is it's only chest up. So you can have a killer costume, but like the viewers can't see it. So I was like, what would be funny? I was like, well, if I did the whole thing with like these big, massive ski goggles and like threw on a toque and a sort of ski specific shirt. Problem is I couldn't find the ski goggles, and we're recording this at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I was like running around the house, digging through closets, and I don't know, they're somewhere. Hopefully I find them by tonight. Although your
glasses look pretty close to goggles, though.
I
wouldn't have known otherwise.
I've settled for sunglasses. This is not the world's best costume, but the other costumes I have in the house, I've worn on previous years of this. I didn't want to roll out Batman for like the second time in 3 years. So it's been a busy couple weeks, and I didn't properly prepare. But I did have an idea before going to bed last night. But stupidly, I don't know why I didn't look out the goggles.
Honestly, I think your costume looks great. It's like,
so I'm a ski bum.
I feel like maybe you look closer to the guy who should be like shoveling snow more than skiing snow, but like you look really good.
Hey, you know what? This is like interpretive art. So however you interpret it, there you go.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're an art piece. Commission.
And you got some Ted Lasso going on. That much is, you see, you've done some work. Like that looks like a costume you could like. That looks like, there you are, whistle and all. Looks like a costume you could actually take to a real party. Or I don't know if you're handing out candy. I don't know what your living situation's like, but that's a real thing right there.
Oh yeah, I plan on wearing this costume in the future. Honestly, I just like you, I didn't want a repeat of a costume. I've worn the Homer Simpson onesie on this show, and I went to a Spirit Halloween, and I was just trying to find something small. And then I saw the full Ted Lasso costume, and I was like, I'm buying this. This might be the best investment I could make for future Halloween. So I even committed to the bit and wore the fake mustache.
Honestly, it looks amazing. Like it does look like that could be real. Like if someone just saw a picture of you, I don't think they'd think twice that was real.
See, should I wear this outfit to Sens practice today? I
wouldn't, but...
I wouldn't either. I was just curious. Like I was just curious. Like it's Halloween. I'm always curious who on the in the press gallery will wear costumes and commit to the bit for media veils and stuff. I typically wouldn't do it, but I'm curious.
No, I mean I don't look at the Sens group. I know a lot of the reporters there. They're probably a little more laid back than some. But I feel like there's got to be a level of professionalism. Like I realize I'm saying that looking like we're looking. I think when you're doing something on camera, it's appropriate. Like I'm sure, if Gene Principe has a hit out in Edmonton on Halloween, like he was going to do something, and like that's his bit. Like I think that is fine, but I don't know. I don't know about like showing up at something where you're like got to talk to players. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they probably still let you in the building, but I would say just go in your normal garb on this day. Maybe bring some candy, make some friends.
So let it be known, everybody, for everyone who's looking at the outfit and they're like, oh, you didn't wear it to practice. We should have done it. Blame Chris Johnston. Everyone boo this man. Boo this man. It's his fault.
Well, if you are, I report back,
He's
honestly.
Right,
I don't know why it feels like there's like a line and that's on the other side of it, but.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, I would not do this for like practices and stuff. But if I go to practice today and there are people wearing costumes, I will report back. Anyway,
I don't think other than people putting it on like a camera hit or something, I don't think I've ever seen someone just casually, like a newspaper reporter, essentially, like who's not doing a hit on camera wearing a costume.
Steve Simmons. You never seen Steve Simmons wear a costume?
Before the words are even out your mouth.
Straight up, just like, yeah, that guy definitely isn't doing that. Anyway, Happy Halloween to everyone who celebrates. We'll find a way to be serious throughout the duration of this show. Let's start with some trade talk, Siege. The Toronto Maple Leafs have traded away Timothy Liljegren to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a third-round pick in 2025, a 2026 sixth-round pick, and defenseman Matt Benning. Kind of funny. We mentioned Timothy Liljegren at the end of our Monday show, and now we're talking about him as the leadoff for our Thursday show. How did the Leafs get to this deal, and why did they make it?
Well, it was a long process, right? Because really the discussions on a Liljegren trade had their roots last summer. After the season last year, the Leafs certainly gauged the market. I don't think there was a ton of interest at that point in time in making a deal. I mean, this is the one thing I think that gets lost sometimes. That their timing is kind of part of the art of a trade. Because that's not to say, like, my words should not be confused with there's not another team out there that doesn't think he can play in the NHL. That's not the issue. There's not another team that feels it has needs that was compelled to make a deal in the summertime. And so the Leafs really had a choice. You don't give him a qualifying offer. You let him walk away for nothing. You qualify him, take him to arbitration. And I think they were worried that he had a case to make something like $4 million in arbitration. Or you try to sign him to a sensible deal that you might be able to trade down the line. And that's the option they took. They signed him to a 2-year deal at $3 million. Unfortunately for Timothy, he gets the camp this year in the fall, and the Leafs have a new coach in Craig Berube, and he just never got any traction with the coach. And so, you look at the first 10 games of the Leafs season, he played one of them. That was no position for him to be in. And ultimately, San Jose was interested. I don't think at this point in time, Utah made a deal this week and got Olli Maatta. The main reason they prioritized Maatta over someone like Liljegren and maybe others is that Maatta's on an expiring deal. Utah was worried about trading for a player that could complicate the picture down the road here when the Marinos and the Durzees and everyone is back up and running. And so San Jose was kind of the lone suitor by the end, and the Leafs made what they felt was the best deal possible for Liljegren. So, it's kind of it's an onion with a lot of layers, but the high level takeaway is, in the recent time here, he got beat out for his job. Frankly, I mean, Connor Timmins passed him, was a player the coach was more comfortable playing ahead of him. The Leafs even played Philippe Myers ahead of Liljegren, in a recent game last weekend. And so they flip him. They get a third-round pick, a sixth-round pick, and Matt Benning, who's a veteran defenseman who had hip surgery last year. Kind of an interesting piece for them now. He's also a right shot like Liljegren. Like, in theory, he's sort of a veteran depth option, but I do think there's also the possibility he could be flipped in a subsequent deal. So the story on this one isn't fully written yet, but the Leafs did create some cap space by moving Liljegren. They got a couple draft picks, including one. That third rounder probably will have some value as they get closer to the trade deadline. In other moves the Leafs are going to make. And, for Liljegren, he gets a fresh start in San Jose.
Why didn't it work with Liljegren under Craig Berube? Why was he getting passed over?
I think it's style of play. He's not a big defenseman. Obviously the Leafs, they've gotten rather, what's the word they use? Long on the back end since Brad Treliving took over. And so he's not a physical guy. I mean, Liljegren's strengths are he's very, very agile skater. He moves the puck well. The problem in my view, he had in Toronto, and he's still young enough that I don't think it's certainly not beyond possibility. He puts all the things together, and then everyone raves about his skating and his first pass and things that are valuable. But, defensively, he certainly would have some shortcomings. And I think more than anything, he almost had consistency issues. Like he never played at a high enough level for long enough that he earned any coach's trust. I mean, Sheldon Keefe certainly used him in the top 4 in recent seasons for stretches, but he was scratched in every one of the Leafs playoff series at some point. So that tells you when the games got to be the absolute most important, Keefe ultimately lost trust in him for a big game. And when it came to Craig Berube, and the Leafs are clearly going in a direction where they want as many big defensemen as they can, guys that get in the way, that can play physically. He just didn't fit that mold. And so, the Leafs top 4 is basically locked up now for the next 2 or 3 seasons. After that McCabe extension we had earlier in the week, I just don't think they felt like he was a good option to be a, third pairing guy for the team, just because, it's not to say you don't want some puck movers on a third pair, but certainly I think you're generally speaking, you're profiling for bigger players that kill penalties and can be a bit physical on your third pairing. And so I just think he fell out of favor, and the Leafs finally do have some depth. I mean, the other part of this story is Liljegren was drafted 7 years ago. But basically for the last 6 years, organizationally, they've had needs on the right shot of D. They've just not ever had options. Those are the kinds of players they have at times traded for. They acquired Ilya Lyubushkin twice in the last couple of years in separate trades. A big right shot D. He was able to hang around in a way because he had something. He was a bit of a scarce resource for them. But this summer they acquired Chris Tanev and Yanni Hakanpää, who are both right shots. Jake McCabe is playing the left side. Timmins is a right shot. And Myers they signed as well. I mean, he's a depth option. I don't think we're going to get to a stretch where he's playing, every night for the Leafs, but they just all of a sudden have a bunch of options there. So, it's a combination of factors. I don't think it's a personality thing. It's just as much of his style of game didn't fit with where the Leafs are going and what the coach wants.
So Liljegren on the move. You mentioned Alimata going to Utah earlier this week. Could we see more trades? Is this a sign of more things to come?
I think we could. When I talk about timing of trades, you see the Mata deal, and then this one happens pretty soon after. I think there's some coincidence there, but it does feel like there's a lot of teams. Sometimes early in the year, this early in the season, it seems like any trade talk is more forced from the media. I get the sense there actually are a lot of teams hunting around, looking for ways to address their needs. I mean, some of them are bigger picture, bigger kind of deals that probably will take some time. But I don't have one trade that I can tell you is coming down the pipe, but it certainly feels like there's been conversations and there might be a little more urgency. I mean, it's been a weird start to the year. Some teams have really struggled. Some teams have done well, but are losing lopsided games. I don't know. It feels like the whole league still water hasn't found its level in the league yet. It feels like there's a lot of up and down stuff still happening out there. So, I would say stay tuned on the trade front, but, it does certainly feel like this. It's not like everything's going to go quiet now for 3 weeks. I think we're going to see a little bit more movement here.
To your point about the weirdness, the injury bug striking the way that it has struck in the early part of the year is very, very noticeable. Of course, doesn't get more noticeable than the best player in the world being sidelined for the next 2 to 3 weeks with an ankle injury, and that is one Connor McDavid. Obviously, that's not good for the Edmonton Oilers. But what's next for them?
Well, it's not good on a couple levels. I mean, I think the natural concern is, that the Oilers are going to make sure Connor McDavid, and he's going to make sure he's getting the best care you could possibly get for his injury. But, given that his speed and his skating, I see you adjusting that mustache over there, Tim.
I very nearly, as I was just trying to, I felt something on my nose. I very nearly ripped the mustache off. Sorry. I'm so sorry for that.
You don't need to be sorry.
Broke your concentration. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, it's very clear Connor McDavid's going to get the best care he can ever get on this injury. But, the truth of the matter is, even if he returns in a couple weeks, I think there'll be some questions or worries about, how much does he have to manage it even while playing? Does it impact or to what degree does it impact what he does best? I mean, it's not a good thing, obviously, to paint it as missing 2 to 3 weeks. I think it actually was a good outcome because there was a world that this was a more severe high ankle sprain. There was a world this was a 6-week injury, maybe not a 2 to 3 week injury or something longer than that. And I do know from speaking with players in the past that have had that particular high ankle sprain that they felt even when they returned, took a while to just feel right. I mean, you can physically play a game, but are you at your best? And so, yeah, this is not good because the Oilers were below 500 slightly with Connor McDavid. They're probably going to play anywhere from 8 to 12 games, depending on how long things go without him now. And, it's a crucial part of their season. The glass half full take on this, that team certainly hasn't got up to speed yet. A lot of its better players or best players have not performed at their best. And this will probably get safe to say this will get everyone's attention in the room. Big picture, it sounds like it could have been worse, and that was avoided with the prognosis the Oilers and McDavid got. But not a great start to the year in Edmonton. Obviously with the results, and then this took up 2 days where he had to fly back, and there's concern. But I sensed a little sense, breath of relief that it wasn't any worse than what transpired.
I know I kind of predicted that the Oilers would have this lull, but it's still very surprising that it's playing out the way that it has. For example, without looking, what's Zach Hyman's stat line through 10 games?
I know he was stymied for a while. Does he have 2 assists?
No, he has 1 assist. That's all he has through 10 games. 1 point.
No goal?
No goal.
Wow.
I know. That's such a fall off for a player who it looked as if had that spot with McDavid and was primed to score tons of goals with the style of play that he has, and he has no goals through 10.
Yeah, and 10 games, that's getting to a meaningful stretch, right? I think over 4 to 5 games, lots of variations happen. Sometimes guys go on benders and have 7 goals in 5 games, but no one thinks they're going to stay at that. Similarly, you can, even the best players are held off, but that's a long run. I mean, look, the Oilers' power play is one of the things that's abandoned them, and that's a place. I'm not just saying for Zach Hyman, but all their top players tend to feast there because they just score so often with the man advantage. It's tough. I wonder where that leaves Zach, or how much it impacts the Four Nations possibilities. I've seen some predictions out there that had him maybe playing with McDavid, earning an invitation to that team. But that surprises me.
Absolutely. And speaking of more injuries, you've seen the Colorado Avalanche lineup?
Well, I've seen what it used to be with the X's through it.
Jeez, it's the injury bug that has hit them like nuts.
Do you have the full list in front of you? Just read the names now, because it is pretty crazy. I mean, we actually talked about to start the year. They were down 3 top 6 forwards to start the year with Nichushkin, Drouin, Arturi Lehkonen, and obviously Landeskog is the other one I'm thinking of. But they've since added Ross Colton, Miles Wood.
Yep.
Who else we got?
So Drouin is on IR, Lehkonen's still on IR, Nichushkin's still out, Landeskog's still out, Ross Colton, Miles Wood. Those are the names not available to the Colorado Avalanche as of right now. It's like it's tough. Like they've had to play some young players in place, and again, as I mentioned earlier, Oliver Shillington had to play at forward for the Avs against the Tampa Bay Lightning last night, and I'm really just going off of social media reaction with this one. Not a lot of rave reviews.
Well, I mean, what should be expected?
He's a defenseman.
What should be expected? I mean, there's the odd player that has done this, right? Brent Burns had a pretty good run at forward, and then went back to D. There's a few. Mark Streit. Way back when Wendell Clark was drafted as a defenseman and played his NHL career as a forward. But I mean, obviously there's examples of it. It's not to say it can't be done, but there's probably a reason it's uncommon. It's not so easy. And so, the only reason he was in the game in that position is as a sign of where they're at and kind of how desperate or urgent the situation is. But man, there's not a lot they can do. Like the one thing that hasn't changed is, there might be a smaller trade or something that they can do to, just try to strengthen themselves a little bit. But a lot of this has to come from within. There's huge load right now on the Rantanens and McKinnons and McCarrs, kind of the horses of the team that try to pull everyone through it. They're good enough to do it. Those guys have gotten pretty hot. I know they lost the game on Wednesday, but they've played pretty well after their start and at least got it back to the 500 level and kept themselves going. I mean, that's got to be the only focus is just trying to stay basically somewhere in the mix until those players get back. But you can't wave a wand, and there's cap constraints. There's just obviously there's only so many assets you have to trade. So Colorado is in one. That was my view on where they're at, and it's not. I still think they have enough talent to get through it, but I don't know at what point does too much become too much. They're going to need some saves too, which they haven't gotten all season as well.
Yeah, That is very true. Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating looking at this Colorado Avalanche team with the start that they had. They turned it all around, winning 5 in a row, and now the injury bug is hitting them. They've turned themselves into the most interesting team to follow through the first 10 or so odd games this season.
And do you know what? How many teams right now are feeling great about where they are? I mean, Winnipeg is an obvious one. They're 9-1, and a lot. I mean, they took the Leafs scored 6 goals on them in the one lot, but like they've just everything looks good in Winnipeg. Like Kyle Connor's filling the net. Hellebuck's been great. What a start there. But how many teams are feeling great around the league? I don't think it's a long list. It's not to say everybody's struggling, but I do feel like it's been a kind of a weird start to the year.
To your point, like no one off, at least if you're going off of like points and stuff and points percentage. I mean, the Jets maybe could be that team, but no one's really pulled away and established themselves as the team. The Jets, I think, probably would count. But I think
Tampa's feeling good. Tampa's got off to a pretty good start without Stamkos. Like that whatever transition you want to call it has probably gone about as well as you could hope for them. But keep in mind, it's not just Stamkos. They traded Sergachev away. I mean, they lost two guys that have been sort of foundational or very present pieces of their team, and they're doing well. But I'm just looking around, like in Boston, it seems like there's a fair amount of unrest around the Bruins. They're blowing up their lines. Vibes are probably pretty good in Florida coming off the cup. They're over in Finland right now, jumping in lakes and going through the sauna treatment. So probably not a lot of craziness there, but they've dealt with their share of injuries. Obviously Barkov just returned. It's been up and down a little bit in Toronto. The Rangers would be another team that, haven't faced much negativity yet, but I guess the point is Dallas as well. So there's maybe like 5 teams that have probably had a pretty smooth run through the first 3 weeks. But there's 27 other teams that have endured some, either lots of downs or some ups and downs. And, it's just funny how that sort of thing goes.
Do you put New Jersey in that category too?
Ups and downs, I'd say. Because, it's not that they've been bad. It's just that I've seen I've seen the tense Sheldon Keefe after a couple games and someone that obviously we got to know in Toronto well. I mean, very emotional coach in the moment. And not all the emotions have been good, but obviously, Carolina's another one. They just went through a West Coast trip where I think they got all but 1 point. Anyway, they're another team that I'll put them in the Tampa bucket, that they said goodbye to a lot of players in the offseason. They're working in some new faces and they've started off having some good success. So yeah, I'm not saying that everybody around the league is reeling, but it feels like there's a lot of shit hitting the fan, for lack of a better way to put it.
This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shopify. When you think of some brands like Alo, Skims, Allbirds, you think of some really great products and even some really great marketing at times. But not too many people think of the business behind the business that makes selling so much easier. And for millions of businesses, it's Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. They're home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not so secret Shop Pay. Big game changer for them. It boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way fewer carts going abandoned and way more sales going up. Businesses that sell more, they use Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that brands like Alo and Skims, like I mentioned earlier, they use those and they see a ton of success. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Johnston to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Johnston. Keeping on the subject of teams that are not doing that great, and I know that as we're doing this, they have the exact same record as the Boston Bruins, but the Montreal Canadiens, they lost that game to Seattle earlier this week, losing 8-2, and that's a really interesting situation. Just a team that I know they're not supposed to make the playoffs this year. But I felt as if with the Canadiens, they're supposed to at least show some kind of progression. And while it is early and the record is 4-5-1, I think we've seen a lot of defensive mishaps and a lot of goals allowed through those first few games of the season. They have a goal differential of -12. Like, it's by far the worst in the division. I don't know if it's the absolute worst in the league, but it's one of the worst in the league right now.
Right. And what I'm sensing in Montreal is, they have played without expectations for a couple of years. I mean, they have been like the favorite son or daughter that like anything they do is cute, right? Like anytime it's like, oh, any small bit of success was celebrated. And look, I'm not blaming the fans for that. They went through a badly, desired rebuild or whatever you want to call it. I think they call it the rebuild, so we can call it the rebuild.
Yeah, they literally have an entire series you can watch on Crave called The Rebuild.
Right. But basically fans had wanted that and so there was a lot of patience there. I just sensed the patience running a little less thin. Martin St. Louis in particular, the head coach, you've just seen it. Like, I don't think there's anything that bad that's happened, but he had the line to the reporters along the lines of, he's not listening to their criticisms because he'd never go to them for advice, which I actually think is good stoic way of thinking, but maybe not. It's not always maybe a grenade you want to toss into a media environment like the one you have in Montreal, because I'm sure they'll be dusting off versions of that quote, or they'll be quipping on that every time something goes wrong now. It just feels a little like the tension's gone up there. And look, part of it is you're playing a really young blue line. You're trying to bring along a lot of players. I know they sent Logan Mailloux back to Laval on Wednesday. They do got some injuries up front. Like there's some mitigating factors, but they're seeing a lot of goals go in their net, and they've had a couple of the one-sided games like the one they had against Seattle this week. And so, I'm with you in that everyone should probably still be a little bit, and I think management and ownership is they're being calm. Like no one's panicking yet, but the thing is they do need to show some growth this year. Like they got to bring along some of these younger players. I mean, there's some nice stories there too. I mean, Cole Caulfield with 9 goals already. What a start he's had to the year. And that's a positive thing. He hasn't hit 30. He scored a lot of goals for how young he is in his career, but he hasn't hit 30 in a season yet. I mean, he's got a great chance to do that and get 10 or even more than that to, get to 40 perhaps. So, there's good stories there. And I think that you've got to accentuate those if you're around the Canadiens, but the expectations frankly are higher. And so on the nights that they are outclassed by a lot, I just think the questions are going to get sharper. At some point, I think the fans have been patient, Julian. You got a better read on that than me, but at some point, maybe they might get booed if it's a stretch of games. Like this is, it's a big hockey market that's been kind of a sleeping giant lately. It's been kind of like, all right, but I feel like it's awakening again. And, they're trying to take the hard step, right? They're trying to become good to eventually be great. It caught my attention this week that it really is starting to feel a little bit more tense there.
I just think for people in that market, my sense is that they definitely know they're not good enough yet, but I can sense some impatience in certain corners. And I think at the very least for them, they want to at least see that it's going somewhere, and that if they're not going to win, they could still get star talents like an Ivan Demidov who's playing out in Russia right now. And at the very least, something's got to get done with the defense. It doesn't look that great. I know Lane Hudson's there and he's provided that offense, but we've seen some underlyings on the defensive side too. They have not ideally been perfect for him. So I think those concerns showing themselves for the Canadiens in the early part of the season. If I'm a Canadiens fan, like you're not that encouraged, at least for right now, but definitely helped by the fact that the expectations have been so low. But of course, like this is a market that you still have people who, even if they know they're not supposed to be good, they still want to be good. They still think they're the Montreal Canadiens and anything could happen, right? So
it underlines the challenges of a rebuild, right? Look how many young D they have in the organization. And, I know Reinbacher got injured, but it's hard to develop that many players simultaneously. It's not to say it can't be done, but especially at that position, generally speaking, it takes defensemen a little longer to get up to speed and become capable NHL players. I think there's just less way to hide them in the game. And sometimes it's just down to physical gifts or physical attributes rather that have to develop, get stronger and bigger. I think mentally too, it's a challenging position. So, it's not, I feel like Montreal, it could be turn into a crazy year there if they don't take some steps forward. And it's not that, again, you mentioned the record, like it's not to say that it's not going to happen, but you see some cracks when, they've been blown out a couple times recently. And I just don't think they have the personnel to play stout defensive games. Kind of ironic they won their season opening game 1-0, because
that's true.
Not really the way they're built. I think they can certainly, with Caulfield and some others, like they can get in some run and gun games, but they're not a lock it down team at this stage of their development.
One more thing on the Canadiens. Do you think because of what we've seen early on with this team, especially on the defensive side, and how testy it's been in that market, especially with Marty St. Louis, what do you think about his future? What do you think about his spot in the hot seat that will always be hot in Montreal?
It's tough to say. I think he's going to control his own future. I mean, he's got a couple more years, I believe, on his contract, so it's not, there's not contractual pressure there. But we're talking about a Hockey Hall of Fame player, someone who was coaching, was it a Bantam team when he got hired to the job? Like it's not a typical coach. He's not a lifelong coach in his career, right? Like I don't know, what his plans are. I don't know if he wants to do this, whether it's in Montreal or somewhere else for the next 15 years. I mean, I think he could. There's a lot of to like, I think, about Marty St. Louis. I think it's fair to ask the question, is he the one, he's the one to get them back on their feet, but is he the one to push them to the next level? I mean, some of that is it's a guessing game. I mean, it's probably safe to take the no side of that argument because, coaches just generally speaking don't last much more than 3 years, and, he's coming up to his time, but, he's so new in the job and as you've noted, like he's very much a chip on his shoulder guy, even to this day. He obviously had to overcome a lot to have the amazing career he did. Not many players have ever been on waivers and then won a Hart Trophy. And he saw both ends of that equation. And obviously just being a smaller man, had to really fight through a lot to become a top flight scorer in the NHL. So I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't bet against him. I don't know what he's going to want to do. That's the unknowable aspect of this is, I don't know, I'm not saying he's going to quit on the team. Don't read it into the wrong way. I'm more saying I just don't know. Does he want to do this for a long time? But I think he's shown the ability to adapt in his own life. And I do think there's a world that it goes on longer, but it's, right now it just feels like everyone's getting used to a new environment in a sense. It's the same city. It's the same jersey. It's the same, but what's changed is, some of the noise and some of the heat.
Can I mention one more NHL team before I bring up PWHL expansion? One more NHL team for you, if that's okay.
Of course, Coach Lasso, whatever you want.
Look at you. The Calgary Flames loses of 4 in a row. You might remember a couple weeks ago, it was revealed that if the Calgary Flames were to make the playoffs, Siege would have to eat a whole stack of O. Henry bars. You could hear him groaning about that now. Losers of 4 in a row.
May your Halloween be O. Henry bar free.
You don't have to listen to him for that.
Not yours, Julian. I hope you get all the O. Henry bars, but.
Oh, I will treat myself to one today. That is for damn sure. But the Flames crashing down to earth. What are your thoughts on that team and what's going on over there? I obviously have my thoughts too, but I'd like to know yours.
Well, I mean, I did think it was kind of inevitable, I guess. Just because the origin of that bat again is I didn't buy into what we were seeing, as that they were just going to be a top flight team. I mean, what are your thoughts? I'd like to hear yours more. You mean you're closer to this? Yeah, you're closer to them than I've been. I mean, it's inevitable.
It was inevitable. It was always going to happen. I was really.
I just don't want to say I told you so, but I kind of felt like this was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not taking any pleasure from them being down in the situation that they're in. It's just more like, I don't know. I think for fans, they got their couple of games where they got to feel good about the team, and I'm sure there are a lot of Oilers fans right now not happy about the fact that their team is still below the Flames in the standings, at least for right now. I think for this Flames team, though, yeah, they were not projected to make the playoffs. I guess just to see it kind of fall off a little bit, just losing 4 in a row. They got dusted against Utah yesterday. Like those are some tough games to go through on a team like Calgary, where a lot of those guys have a lot of pride. And
yeah, it was Michael Backlund's 1,000th game.
He's getting my stick tap at the end of the show. I'll
just sniped it from you.
I was about to say, I'll give him his proper due a little later. And now in the market, you have people looking at Jonathan Huberdeau's performance again. Matthew Coronado, his place in the lineup. His agent retweeted a tweet a couple days ago that was, not too pleased about Coronado not being a fixture in the lineup. Like it's the noise is starting to kind of, appear again in a negative way with this Flames team. And it might only get louder if they continue to lose games. I think that's a really interesting, we're talking about interesting starts, a team's having the best start in franchise history and then kind of crashing down over the last course of a week. Like it's dizzying, at least for me.
Right. Well, here's the good news is I don't think they're going to lose every game either. So, as much as the highs always seemed a little too high, I don't think the lows will be the as low as probably the feeling is in the moment when you go through those stretch of games. So, there's still time for the Coronados to develop, and obviously, I just think that it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I mean, look, there's a world I still could see them challenging for that playoff spot. I don't think I don't see them being at the bottom of the conference either. They're just kind of in that grouping of teams that might have some 3-game win streaks and 5-game losing streaks. You know what I mean? I mean, they just might be, where there's a little bit up and down there. So I guess stay tuned in Calgary, but I'm not celebrating either because I know that O'Henrys are just around the corner. I'm also not cheering against them. I just don't want you to know.
We don't cheer for or root against teams here, but your disgust for O'Henry disgusts me. Anyway, one more thing before stick taps. The PWHL announcing they could be expanding, could see as many as 2 more teams added to the PWHL as early as next season. What are your thoughts on the PW looking to expand, and any idea on which teams could be in the mix?
Well, it's really interesting. They've only completed 1 season, you'll recall, with the original 6. There'll be a second season, starting here shortly in a couple weeks, where there'll still just be 6 teams. But the fact they're already at a position where, the business has looked encouraging enough where this could make sense I think it's pretty fascinating. And so, it's important to note that the PWHL, that the teams are owned by a single entity. So it's not like there's individual ownership groups. This isn't like a traditional expansion process you might see in another sport where there's a certain price put on it and, someone else joins the business. And so really what the league is going to do is, look at what cities have interest and then decide between, market size, facilities, media opportunities, business opportunities, does it make sense? Think of it almost like, a franchise store deciding to add another store in a new location. Where does it make sense? And so, I think you look to the markets they've already at least dipped a foot in. The 2 that jump to mind there are Pittsburgh and Detroit, where they played neutral site games last year. The Penguins in particular, I think have a lot of interest, but again, it's not as though it would be Fenway Sports Group that owns the Penguins owning a team in Pittsburgh. So I don't know how they navigate those challenges. Quebec City has been very open about its desire to get a team to Quebec. And, there's going to be a game there this year, as well, which has been announced. So I think that's one to watch, but, I did get the sense that there's been a ton of informal sort of interest put forward. And so now they've started what would be kind of a formal process where cities will apply. And so the decisions have not been made yet because I think you got to see what's in front of you. I mean, I don't know logistically if some teams in the West could be ruled out. I mean, I know you've mentioned Calgary when you were living there. I mean, I think it would make sense, obviously, with
absolutely
Hockey Canada being based there. Obviously, a city that's has a long history with women's hockey. But I don't know logistically if that'll make sense. I mean, that's all part of the evaluation that will happen. I think when they have the full list of teams and they run through the factors. It's not to say anyone is excluded automatically, but if you look at the way the NHL expanded, it took a little while until you got sort of Western expansion. Some of that was the markets, but I think some of that was naturally just putting the game in places where it's already popular and the travel costs are what they are. So anyway, I just want to touch on that story because I think it's fascinating. They're already in this position. Pretty exciting times for the league, and we'll keep you updated as they move along.
1,000%. Do you have a stick tap before we wrap up, sir?
Well, we've already spoiled yours, so let's go, Michael Backlund. What do you got for us?
1,000 games for the captain of the Calgary Flames. I should be regarding him as the longtime captain. I know it's only been official, only as a few years, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as a lot of people in that market are concerned, they've considered him as a de facto captain, even if he didn't have the C on his chest. But also an absolute professional, a gentleman, someone who has meant so much to the community of Calgary for his work with different charities, in particular with the ALS. I think just an absolute great pro to deal with every day when I was in that market, and really happy for him that he was able to get his flowers. 1,000 games played is a mark that so many would love to have in the NHL.
It's the silver stick, man.
Yes, sir. And for Michael Backlund to have that honor, big up to him. So he's deserving of a stick tap from me.
I was going to go with Kyle Connor. Hit his 500.
I like that one.
Hit his 500th point. I think sometimes, I did mention the Jets earlier in the show, sometimes we don't stick tap our friends in Winnipeg enough, but he's had an awesome start to the year. He's got points in all 10 games the Jets have played. You know, I think that there'd be a pretty good sort of friendly prop wage on the pod. Who's going to end up with more goals, Cole Caulfield or Kyle Connor? Two American snipers. And I might be inclined at this point to maybe take Connor in that one. But, you know, he got his 500th point in Detroit. He's a Michigan boy. His family was in the crowd, was watching that game last night. And it was just in my mind that great start to the year for him and for Winnipeg. And shout out to, you know, that milestone, 500 points is legit. And the Jets will have a decision on him, or he will have a decision on them. But he's 1 year out. He can sign an extension as of this summer. He's got this year and next on his contract still. But, you know, it's going to be, you know, Winnipeg looks like they're kind of in a beast mode, but they've also got this underlying thing like the Leafs do with Marner. You know, they got to figure out Ehlers and Connor. And so some intrigue to come there as well.
100%. That's going to do it for our Thursday show. Get your questions in now for our Monday show. Siege, great work as always this week.
Be safe out there with your trick-or-treating. I spent an ungodly amount of money on candy, so I hope the kids show up in my hood, or else my runs are going to have to be a little bit longer to fend off all the calories I'm taking in for all this candy. So,
what candy are you giving to the children?
Oh man, I got a bit of everything. I mean, I certainly went heavy on. I love like Reese's, so I like loaded up on Reese's peanut butter cups. Got some of like the other grab bag ones. No Henry's to be found. Will not be giving that out at my door. But I even bought
skip their house.
I even bought like some rockets, you know, the old school rockets. Like I just got like one bag of those to mix in. Like I sort of of the mind I want to have too much rather than too little. I don't want to get to where I'm like turning my light off and the street's still full of kids. So
I still think trick-or-treating, I mean, it's on a Thursday, which is better than other years, but I still think Halloween should be on the last Friday of October. That's a hill I'm willing to die on. It should just be that. That way everyone could just hang out for the weekend. You don't have to worry about going to school the next day and sugar rushes and all that. Just make it the last Friday of October. Just do it.
You can't just arbitrarily change Halloween.
Yes, I can.
No way.
Yes, I can.
I mean, I know you got the coach's whistle right now, but there's no chance you can just. It's been done this way for so long. Like you can't break that tradition.
I don't. Look, here's the thing. You could still celebrate Halloween as a thing on the 31st. But like, what if you lived in a neighborhood and you want to see all the children have fun? Like, why not have everyone come together and be like, hey, you know what? Last Friday of the month, that's where we're going to have all our lights on and we're going to have all of our candy. And if all the kids want to go around, they do it. And you can still celebrate and have your decorations up on the 31st. I'm just saying.
In my hood, this tends to play out from like 6 to 7:30. Like it's something that can happen on a weeknight. It's not like it's going to midnight.
But that's like early. Like you should have like back in the old days, it could be like 8, 9. Like that. I don't know, man. Like I think if you give them that opportunity, like it could be really fun. I don't know. I'm a grown man arguing about Halloween. I don't need to do this.
I've never even heard anyone forward this argument. Like this is the first time that I've ever heard it.
Well, I don't even really know who to forward this argument to. Right? That's why I have platforms like the CJ Show to spout off on my takes. Anyway, get your questions in for Monday's show. We'll get to as many as we can, and subscribe to the podcast. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Happy Halloween.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.